Selena Hart reached up and touched another woman's husband like she owned him. Not a brush of the hand, not a professional adjustment. She lifted her fingers to Adrian Voss's collar, smoothed it slowly, let them linger there, and then she smiled. The kind of smile a woman saves for a man she has already decided belongs to her. And Adrian Voss let her. He didn't pull away, didn't check his phone, didn't scan the room the way a guilty man would. He just stood there in the middle of that jewelry boutique like a man who had forgotten he had a wife standing 40 feet away watching every second of it. Celeste saw it all. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't make a single sound. She just reached down, slipped her wedding ring off her finger, and placed it in the bottom of her shopping bag like it was something she no longer needed. Then she walked away. And the most dangerous man in the city had absolutely no idea his world had just ended. If this were your husband, if that were your ring, what would you have done? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications, because the stories we tell here are the kind that stay with you long after the credits roll. Once you've subscribed, drop a comment below telling me what city or country you're watching from. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. And if something in this video hits you right in the chest, hit that like button. It means more than you know. Now let's get into Celeste. Rowan was not the kind of woman people worried about. That was the thing about her that most people misunderstood. She was calm, she was composed, she laughed easily and argued rarely, and when something bothered her, she had a tendency to get very, very quiet instead of loud. Her friends called it grace. Her mother called it strength. Adrian, in the early years, used to call it the most beautiful thing about her. Lately, he didn't call it anything, because lately he didn't really talk to her at all. She was 37 years old and had been married to Adrian Voss for 9 years. She knew exactly what he was. She had known since their second year together when a man had come to their apartment at 2 in the morning with a split lip and a coded message, and Adrian had taken the message, told her to go back to bed, and then disappeared for 11 days without a word. When he came back, he had a bruise under his left eye, and he smelled like gun smoke, and he sat across from her at the kitchen table and said, very plainly, "I need you to understand that there are parts of my life I will never be able to share with you, and I need you to decide right now if that's something you can live with." She had looked at him for a long time. "Can you keep me safe?" she asked. "Always," he said. "Can you be honest with me when it matters most?" "Yes." "Then I can live with it," she said. And for 7 years that had been enough. The empire Adrian controlled was enormous and deliberately invisible. On paper, he ran Voss Capital, a private equity firm that owned stakes in logistics companies, hotel chains, and tech infrastructure across 4 continents. That was the version of Adrian Voss that appeared in Forbes profiles and charity galas and city council handshakes. The other version moved freight that never appeared on any manifest, settled disputes that never appeared in any court, made problems disappear in ways that required neither lawyers nor paperwork. Celeste didn't know every detail. She didn't want to. What she knew was that her husband's word was the kind of word that men built their lives around, and that for a long time his word to her had meant everything. Then something shifted. She couldn't point to the exact moment. That was the cruelest part. There was no single fight, no obvious rupture, no moment she could hold up and say, "That was it, that was when it changed." It was slower than that. It was the way dinner started getting pushed back from 7 to 9 to sometimes not at all. It was the way his phone screen started tilting away from her when it buzzed. It was the way he stopped reaching for her hand during car rides, not dramatically, just gradually, the way a tide goes out. So slowly you don't notice until you're standing somewhere cold and exposed and wondering when the water left. She tried. That was important. She tried in the quiet ways a woman tries when she loves someone and doesn't want to push too hard. She cleared her schedule to be home when he was. She learned his assistant's name so she could call and find out when he'd be free. She cooked the lamb chops he loved even when she was too tired to eat. She bought a dress in the dark blue he always said made her eyes look like deep water, and she wore it on a Tuesday just to see if he'd notice. He noticed. He said she looked nice. Then his phone buzzed and he was gone. Mila Grant, who had been Celeste's best friend since they were both 19 and broke, and sharing a 1-bedroom apartment with 1 working burner, had watched all of this with the quiet, careful concern of someone who knows that telling a woman something she already suspects will only make her feel worse. But by the morning of that Saturday, Mila had started to worry about more than just Celeste's marriage. She was worried about Celeste herself. The woman she had known for 18 years, the one who laughed so hard at bad movies that she fell off the couch, the one who cried at commercials about dogs, the one who once argued with a stranger in a parking lot for 20 minutes because the stranger had said something unkind to a teenager. That woman had gone somewhere quiet and small inside herself, and Mila couldn't quite reach her anymore. So she suggested shopping, not because either of them needed anything, because sometimes what a woman needs is to walk around somewhere bright and expensive and pretend, for just a few hours, that the hard thing at home is someone else's hard thing. Ashford Galleria was exactly the right kind of place for that kind of pretending. It was the sort of mall that didn't smell like cinnamon pretzels and cleaning solution. It smelled like sandalwood and money. The floors were actual marble, not the faux marble that's supposed to look like marble but doesn't. The boutiques were the kind with heavy glass doors and no prices visible from outside, which was its own kind of message. The light fell from somewhere above in long, warm shafts that made everything, the handbags, the watches, the people, look slightly better than it actually was. Celeste let herself breathe there. She and Mila wandered through the afternoon the way they used to wander when they were young and careless, picking up objects they couldn't afford and commenting on them with great seriousness. They laughed over a handbag that cost more than 3 months of Celeste's rent had been back in the one-bedroom with one-burner days. They debated the ethics of a fur-trimmed coat for nearly 10 minutes. They tried on sunglasses and took pictures of each other, pretending to look wealthy and bored. For an hour and a half, Celeste forgot. Not everything. Not the 9 months of quiet. Not the tilted phone screens. Not the dinners that never happened. But she forgot enough that when she laughed, she meant it. And when Mila grabbed her arm to show her something ridiculous in a window display, she felt like herself. Then Mila stopped. Just stopped. Mid-sentence. Mid-step. The laughter fell off her face so fast that Celeste felt the absence of it before she even looked up. Celeste. The way Mila said her name. Not a question. Not a warning. Something worse. Something that sounded like someone had punched the air out of her. Celeste followed her gaze. The boutique across the atrium was Morel, the most exclusive jewelry house in the city, the kind that required an appointment for most customers. Its windows displayed 3 pieces at a time, lit from below so each stone threw its own shadow. The glass door was open. Inside, a woman in the boutique's signature charcoal uniform stood to one side, watching. Adrian stood near the display counter. Next to him was Selena Hart. Celeste had met Selena once. Exactly once. A company event, 14 months ago. Selena had shaken her hand with a firm, practiced grip and said it was wonderful to finally meet her, said it the way someone says a thing they have rehearsed slightly too many times. She was 31, extraordinarily put together, the kind of beautiful that looked like it had been worked at. Not inherited, but constructed, feature by feature, choice by choice. She had started as Adrian's executive secretary 18 months prior, and had, according to the one time Adrian mentioned her in passing, proven indispensable. Celeste had not thought much about her after that. She thought about her now. Adrian was smiling. That was the first thing that hit her, before anything else, before she could even fully process what she was seeing. Adrian was smiling. Not the controlled public smile he wore at events, not the distracted half-smile he aimed at his phone. The real one. The one that started in his eyes before it reached his mouth. The one she had not seen in a long time. A very long time. He reached toward Selena. His hand went to her neck, to the clasp of a necklace that Celeste couldn't quite see from where she stood, and he fastened it with the careful concentration of a man doing something that mattered to him. And Selena tilted her chin up the way a woman tilts her chin up when she trusts the hands near her throat. Then Selena said something. Celeste couldn't hear it. The marble atrium swallowed the distance. But she watched Selena lean toward Adrian, watched the small private smile that crossed her face before her lips moved, watched Adrian's expression shift into something soft and unguarded. Selena pressed her lips to his cheek. Not a fast, professional air kiss, the kind you hold for just 1 second longer than you should, the kind that communicates something. Celeste felt the world go very still. Not the dramatic stillness of movies, where the music swells and the camera pulls back. The real kind. The kind where everything keeps moving around you. Shoppers walking past, a child running toward a fountain, a sales associate laughing at something behind her. And you just stop being part of any of it, like someone has gently removed you from the picture without telling you. She was aware of Mila beside her, aware of Mila's hand closing around her elbow, aware of Mila saying, very quietly, "Let's go. Let's go right now, Celeste. Let's go." She couldn't go. Her feet were not receiving instructions. She watched Adrian sign something at the counter. The purchase documents, she realized. He was buying the necklace that was now around Selena Hart's neck. And she watched him straighten and say something to the boutique associate. And she watched Selena take his arm the way a woman takes the arm of someone she has taken the arm of many times before, easy and natural and without hesitation. They walked out of the boutique together. They walked past a window display. They walked past two shoppers who didn't look up. They didn't look across the atrium. They didn't see her. Adrian looked lighter than he had in months. His shoulders were different. His jaw was loose. I was talking, actually talking, not the clipped, efficient sentences she got at home, but animated, interested, engaged conversation. And Selena was looking up at him with an expression that Celeste recognized because she had worn it herself once, years ago. Adoration, that was the word for it. Selena Hart was looking at Celeste's husband the way Celeste had looked at him when she was 28, and hopeless in love and completely certain that she was the luckiest woman alive. Mila's grip on her arm tightened. "Celeste, please." Celeste looked down at her own hand, at the ring on her left hand, fourth finger. Platinum band, simple, no stones. She had specifically asked for no stones because she had said once that she was not the kind of woman who needed proof of something real, and Adrian had laughed and said that was exactly why she was the only woman he wanted. She slipped it off. It came off easily. Easier than she would have expected. She placed it in the bottom of her shopping bag, the one with the blue and white stripes, the one from the stationery boutique 2 floors up, the one that still had tissue paper in it, and she felt the absence of it on her finger, the slight physical difference of bare skin where there had been metal for 9 years. Then she turned around. Mila was watching her with an expression that was equal parts heartbreak and terror. "What are you doing?" Mila whispered. "I'm leaving," Celeste said. Her voice was calm. That was the thing that frightened Mila most, she would say later. Not the tears, because there were no tears. Not the shaking, because there was no shaking. Just that flat, complete, absolute calm. The calm of a woman who had just made a decision so final that there was no emotion left to attach to it. They walked out of the Galleria through the east exit. Celeste held the shopping bag in both hands, steady, like it was ordinary, like it weighed nothing, like it didn't hold the 9 years she was carrying out of the building. In the parking garage, Mila stopped walking. "Talk to me," she said. "Say something. Celeste, look at me." Celeste looked at her. "I want to go home and pack a bag," she said. "Can you take me?" "Of course," Mila said. "But Celeste, what you saw, we don't know what—" "Mila," very gentle, very final. "I know what I saw." Mila opened her mouth, closed it. She had known Celeste Rowan for 18 years. She knew the difference between the voice of a woman who needed to be talked down and the voice of a woman who had already landed. Celeste had already landed, somewhere cold and clear and below all the noise. "Okay," Mila said quietly. "Okay, let's go." The drive back to the penthouse took 22 minutes. Celeste spent most of it with her phone in her lap, not looking at it. Mila drove and said nothing, which was its own form of love. Once, at a red light, Celeste looked out the passenger window at a couple walking on the sidewalk. Middle-aged, ordinary, the man carrying a grocery bag, the woman gesturing at something she was explaining. And she watched them for the full count of the red light, and then the light changed and they were gone. She packed efficiently. This surprised her, later, when she thought about it. She had expected to fall apart somewhere around the closet. She had expected the sight of his jackets hanging next to her dresses to break her open. Instead, she moved through the bedroom with the focused energy of someone who has been preparing for something they didn't consciously know was coming. 2 suitcases, the things that were hers. Nothing that had been given to her since the marriage, because she did not want to sort through what had been genuine and what had been guilt in the receiving of gifts. She took her laptop, her documents, the framed photograph from her mother's 75th birthday that sat on the nightstand on her side of the bed. She did not take the photographs of herself and Adrian. On the dining table, she placed the envelope. Inside it, his ring. the one that matched hers, that they had chosen together in a small shop in Florence, because they had been in Florence for their one-year anniversary and had walked past the shop 3 times before finally going in, because neither of them was the type to do something like that impulsively. And the note. She wrote it in her own handwriting, on a piece of the good stationery she kept in the kitchen drawer. She didn't draft it first. She wrote it once, and she meant every word, and she didn't read it back. You don't need to explain. The woman I married would never beg to stay where she isn't chosen. Be happy. Goodbye. She put her pen down, picked up her bags, called Mila, who was waiting in the lobby because Celeste had told her not to come upstairs, because some things a person needs to do alone. She took the elevator down. She did not look back at the penthouse, did not stand in the doorway for one last long look the way people do in movies. She left the way she had always believed in leaving the things that no longer served her, cleanly, without ceremony, without theater. The elevator doors closed, and Celeste Rowan disappeared from her husband's life as quietly and completely as smoke. She had been the one person in Adrian Voss's world who loved him before he became someone to fear, and now she was gone. What neither of them knew yet, what the whole city didn't know, was that the truth behind what happened in that boutique was something neither of them had seen coming. But that truth was already moving, already working its way toward the surface, and when it arrived, nothing would be the same for anyone. Part 2 của kịch bản này được triển khai với dung lượng mục tiêu viết đủ 405.000 từ, bắt đầu trực tiếp từ điểm kết thúc của Part 1. Yêu cầu tập trung hoàn toàn vào cấu trúc mâu thuẫn leo thang, các mâu thuẫn nội bộ giữa các nhân vật phải bùng nổ, sự nghi ngờ tăng cao và những sai lầm trong quá khứ bắt đầu để lại hậu quả. Duy trì giọng văn Mỹ thô ráp, giàu cảm xúc, không sáo rộng. Hãy kể theo ngôi thứ 3, tập trung vào những phản ứng bản năng nhất của con người, hơi thở dồn dập, những cái nhìn đầy sát khí và sự mệt mỏi rệu rã. Hội thoại phải chiếm ưu thế, mang tính đối đầu gay gắt, gãy gọn, không triết lý suông, triển khai chi tiết từng phân cảnh, scene by scene, tuyệt đối không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng, tiêu đề phụ hay nhắc đến thực thể tôn giáo. Kết thúc phần này bằng một nút thất kịch tính, The Point of No Return, khiến nhân vật không còn đường lui. Hãy trình bày trực tiếp trong tin nhắn, viết cực kỳ chi tiết từng hành động nhỏ. Nếu đặt giới hạn phản hồi trước khi đủ dung lượng, hãy dừng lại ở một câu rạng rỡ để tôi ra lệnh viết tiếp. Chỉ đắn bắt buộc. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu nhằm mục đích giải trí, không dựa trên bất kỳ sự kiện hay nhân vật có thật nào. Lưu ý đặc biệt quan trọng. Nếu đạt đến giới hạn trả lời, không được dùng giữa câu, hãy viết nốt câu đó hoàn chỉnh không mở rộng nội dung. The show more. Adrian Voss did not panic easily. He had sat across tables from men who intended to kill him and ordered coffee. He had read financial reports that should have ended his empire and signed acquisition papers an hour later. He had taken a blade to the side at 26 years old, pressed his own shirt against the wound, and driven himself to a private clinic because calling an ambulance meant paperwork he couldn't afford. Panic was not something he did. So when he walked into the penthouse at 8:47 that evening and felt the quality of the silence, not the comfortable silence of a home where someone is simply in the other room, but the absolute silence of a place that has been vacated, he did not panic. He stood in the entryway for approximately 4 seconds. Then he saw the dining table. The envelope was white, plain, his name written on the front in Celeste's handwriting, the handwriting he had watched develop over 9 years, the way she made her capital letters slightly larger than necessary, the way her A's still had a small loop at the top from some elementary school habit she'd never broken. He crossed the room. He opened it. The ring fell into his palm first, and he felt the weight of it, the way you feel something that has no business being in your hand. He held it there for a moment before he read the note, and then he read the note once, and then he read it again, and then he stood very still with the ring in one hand and the paper in the other and did absolutely nothing for what might have been 30 seconds or might have been 3 minutes because time had stopped working correctly. The woman I married would never beg to stay where she isn't chosen. He put the note down on the table, picked up his phone, called her. The ringtone sounded 4 times before voicemail. Her voice on the recording, recorded maybe 2 years ago, warm and slightly distracted, like she'd been in the middle of something when she set it up, said she wasn't available and to leave a message. He hung up without leaving one, called again. Voicemail. Again. This time it went straight through, phone switched off, or blocked. He didn't know which was worse. He stood in his kitchen, in a suit that had cost $11,000, in a penthouse that occupied the top 2 floors of the most expensive residential building in the city, and he felt something he had not felt since he was a 12-year-old boy standing outside a hospital room being told by a nurse that the doctor would be out soon. Just wait, just wait. Everything is going to be fine. The feeling of being completely outside any ability to control what happened next. He called Marcus Chen. Marcus had been his head of security for 6 years, former military intelligence, current ghost. The kind of man who answered the phone on the first ring, regardless of the hour. "She's gone," Adrian said. No greeting, no context. Marcus didn't need any. A brief pause. "How long?" "I don't know, I just got home." "Last known location?" "Ashford Galleria, this afternoon." He stopped. Something snagged in his chest. He had been at Ashford Galleria this afternoon. He had been 40 feet from his wife and had not seen her. She was with Mila Grant. "I'll pull the footage and track from there. Credit cards, transit." "Her credit cards are linked to a joint account. She knows that." He said it before he'd fully thought it through and then stopped, because the implication settled over him. She had planned this, or at least anticipated it. She had known not to use the cards. "Check her personal account. She kept a separate account for her freelance work. I don't have access to it." Silence. Then, "I'll need you to authorize the data request through Harlow." "Authorization is given. Call me the second you have anything." He hung up. For a moment he just stood there in his own kitchen with the ring still in his left hand, and he looked at it. Platinum, simple, no stones, the way she had wanted it. And he thought about the shop in Florence where they had stood in front of a glass case, in a shop that smelled like old wood and metal, and they had both pointed to the same ring at the same moment, and Celeste had laughed at that, the real laugh, the one that was slightly too loud for the small shop. And the jeweler had smiled like he had seen this exact moment many times, and it never got old. He put the ring in his breast pocket. Then he started making calls. He called every member of his personal security network in sequence. He called the manager of the private airfield they used for international travel and told him no departures without his personal authorization, regardless of whose name was on the manifest. He called the concierge at Celeste's favorite hotel and asked, without explanation, whether she had a reservation. She did not. He called Mila Grant's number and it went to voicemail, and he left a message that was controlled and measured and said nothing that would indicate the actual pressure building behind his sternum. He sat down at the dining room table. He sat in the chair that faced the chair where Celeste always sat, and he put both hands flat on the table, and he breathed in through his nose and out through his mouth the way he had been taught to control himself when he was 22, and newly inside a world that would kill him if he lost his composure at the wrong moment. It didn't help. He picked up his phone and called Selena. She answered on the second ring, which told him she had been waiting for it. "Mr. Voss?" Her voice had the particular texture of someone trying to sound like they weren't trying. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you tonight." "Where did you go after the Galleria?" he said. A short pause. Calibrated. "Back to the office. I had reports to finish. Is something wrong?" "My wife has left." The silence that followed lasted exactly long enough to tell him something was wrong with it. A normal person, an innocent person, would have said something immediately. A surprise sound, a question, some reflexive human response. Selena's silence was the silence of someone rapidly calculating. "I'm so sorry," she said finally. "That's terrible. Do you know why?" He looked at the empty chair across the table. "Not yet," he said. "Good night, Selena." He ended the call. He didn't know what he suspected yet. The thought was too formless, too early. He only knew that the pause had been wrong, and that something had been wrong with her voice, and that these things would need to be looked at. But first, he needed to find Celeste. Mila Grant's apartment was on the 14th floor of a building in the East Quarter, the kind of building that was neither expensive nor cheap, that had a doorman who worked days only, and a buzzer system that anyone could circumvent with a little patience. Adrian's driver parked across the street at 10:23, and Adrian sat in the back seat and looked up at the lit windows and knew, with the certainty of someone who had spent years reading environments, that Celeste was not there. Mila's lights were on. He went in. The doorman's replacement, a tired man in his mid-50s reading a paperback novel, buzzed him through without question when Adrian said he was visiting a friend on 14. The elevator smelled like Chinese takeout and fabric softener. He knocked on Mila's door. She opened it on the third knock, which meant she had looked through the peephole and taken a moment to decide. She was in sweatpants and a college sweatshirt, and her expression was the expression of a woman who had been waiting for this knock and had decided exactly what she was going to say before it came. "She's not here," Mila said. "I know," Adrian said. "Can I come in?" "No." He looked at her. Mila Grant had never been afraid of him, which was one of the reasons Celeste loved her, and one of the reasons he had always respected her even when she annoyed him. She stood in the doorway of her apartment with her arms crossed and her jaw set, and she looked at him the way a woman looks at someone she holds partially responsible for something she is furious about. "Is she safe?" he said. Something moved across Mila's face, not softening, more like an acknowledgement that this was the right question to ask first. "Yes," she said. "Does she have what she needs?" "Yes." "Will you tell me where she is?" "No." No hesitation, no apology. He put one hand on the doorframe, not aggressively, just to have something to hold. "Mila, I need to explain something to her." "Explain it to me first," Mila said. "Because I was standing right next to her in that mall, and I saw what she saw, and I want to know what explanation covers a man fastening a diamond necklace around another woman's neck and letting her put her lips on his face." The words landed flat and hard. He opened his mouth, closed it. The honest answer was that he didn't fully understand what had happened himself. He knew, standing in that penthouse looking at the note, that something had gone wrong. He knew the image Celeste must have seen. What he did not yet know was how deliberate it had been, how constructed, who had built it, and why. He only had the beginning edge of a suspicion that felt too large to say out loud. "It wasn't what it looked like," he said. Mila stared at him. "Okay," she said finally, and her voice was flat and tired. "I've heard that sentence before, in movies, in my friends' stories. Never once has it turned out to be true. This time it is." "Then prove it, not to me, to her." She dropped her arms. "And Adrian, I say this as someone who has watched Celeste love you for 9 years. You need to understand something. She's not angry right now. She's not going to cry and throw things and give you a chance to talk her out of it. You know what she is? She's done. And done is a lot harder to come back from than angry." He held her gaze. "I know," he said quietly. "Then do better than 'it wasn't what it looked like.'" She closed the door. He stood in the hallway for a moment, then turned and walked back to the elevator. "Done," Mila had said. He pressed the button for the lobby and watched the numbers descend and thought about Celeste removing her ring in the middle of a shopping mall without crying, and he thought about the note, the complete absence of accusation in it. Not a word of anger, not a question, nothing that required an answer, just a quiet, permanent exit. Dunn was right. He needed evidence before he could ask for anything. He called Marcus from the car. "Tell me about the footage." "She was there," Marcus said. "She was in the atrium. She had a direct sight line into Morel. She saw everything." A pause. "She was there when Miss Hart—" He stopped. "Say it." "When Miss Hart kissed you on the cheek, she saw that." Adrian said nothing for a moment. His jaw tightened. He looked out the car window at the city moving past, the light smearing in the slight rain that had started while he was in Mila's building. "What else?" "After you and Miss Hart left the boutique, Mrs. Voss stood in the atrium for approximately 40 seconds. Then she left through the east exit with Miss Grant." Another pause. "She removed her ring while she was still in the atrium, before she left." Adrian pressed the heel of his hand against his mouth. "What time did she leave the penthouse?" "Based on the elevator log, 6:51. She had 2 suitcases. She used the freight elevator on the way out, which is not on the main security feed, but the parking structure camera caught her leaving in Miss Grant's car." "And after that?" "I lost her. Miss Grant's car was picked up going east on Meridian, then she turned into the underground parking structure of the Renwick building, which is a dead zone for city cameras. After that, nothing." The Renwick building. Celeste had a friend who lived in the Renwick, a woman named Joss, who she'd known from her early career, an illustrator who kept odd hours and had once, Celeste had told him, laughing, kept a full set of emergency supplies in her closet because she had grown up with an anxious mother and had inherited the habit. Joss Abara. He had met her twice at events. She had looked at him both times with the particular wariness of a woman who has heard things. He filed it away. He wouldn't go there. Not yet. Celeste needed space to breathe, and the moment he showed up at every possible address she might go to, he became the thing she needed to run from instead of the thing she might eventually turn back to. He needed to understand what had actually happened first. "Marcus," he said, "I need everything on the Ashford Galleria trip. Who scheduled it? Who knew about it? What the original meeting purpose was." He stopped. "And I need the same for the last 6 weeks of Miss Hart's activities. Every meeting she scheduled, every external communication she sent from company channels, every event appearance she arranged." A pause. He could hear Marcus writing. "That's a significant pull." "I'm aware." "Timeline?" "Yesterday," Adrian said. "I won it yesterday." He ended the call and sat back and looked at the rain on the window. Selena had organized that trip to the Galleria. He remembered that now, pulling it from the details of the last weeks. She had told him there was a private showing at Morel of the new Vantage collection, limited production diamonds with an investment profile that overlapped with a portfolio he was restructuring. She had presented it as a business opportunity. He had gone because he trusted her professional judgment, and because he had not, until that moment in his car in the rain, examined the specific shape of that trust, or when it had been formed, or who had cultivated it. He closed his eyes. The next morning started badly. He had not slept. Not really. He had lain in the bedroom that still faintly held the smell of Celeste's shampoo, something with cedar and something floral, a combination she had arrived at after trying approximately 20 different options over 2 years. And he had stared at the ceiling and run through every interaction with Selena Hart that he could pull from the last 18 months. There were more of them than there should have been. That was the thing he couldn't stop landing on. The sheer volume. How many mornings she had appeared at his office before his assistant. How many times she had rearranged his schedule to free up time that she then filled with her presence. How many events she had told him required his personal attendance where she had also attended. How many times she had placed herself in the physical architecture of his life so smoothly that he had not noticed the architecture being built. His 7:30 meeting was with his legal team. Contract review. He sat at the head of the conference table and gave them 40 minutes and was not fully present for any of it, and at least 2 of the lawyers noticed because he could see it in the way they glanced at each other when he failed to respond immediately to a direct question. At 8:15, Selena arrived. She was wearing a dark burgundy dress that was professional enough to be technically appropriate and fitted enough to be something else entirely. She had the necklace on, the diamond necklace, the one from Morel. And when she came through this conference room door and he saw it at her throat, something in him went very cold. She set a portfolio on the table. "Good morning," she said, in the voice she used when she was performing composure. "I have the Donovan file ready for your review before the 2 o'clock. Close the door," he said. She closed it. "Sit down." She sat. The lawyers had gone quiet. Adrian looked at them. "Give us the room," he said. They filed out without question. This happened occasionally, private discussions that the legal team was not cleared for. None of them asked. The door closed. Selena put her hands on the portfolio and looked at him with an expression of professional attentiveness that he now read as performance. "My wife saw us yesterday at Morel," he said. A beat. A very small beat, but it was there. "I didn't realize she was at the Galleria." "Didn't you?" Her eyes didn't change. That was the thing. They just didn't change. Most people, when caught in something, do something with their eyes. A flicker. A shift. Selena's eyes were very steady and very careful, and he thought, she has practiced this. She has practiced exactly this. "Adrian," she said, and the use of his first name without the Mr. Voss, without the professional buffer, landed like something deliberate. "I can see you're upset. I think there may have been a misunderstanding. I'm going to ask you a question," he said, "and I need you to think very carefully before you answer it." She waited. "Did you know my wife was in the Galleria yesterday?" A long pause. "No," she said. He looked at her for a moment. "Okay," he said. "You can go." The surprise that crossed her face was the first genuine expression he had seen from her since she walked in. She had expected more. A confrontation, an accusation she could deflect, a conversation she could steer. The simple dismissal left her without a script. She stood, picked up the portfolio. The Donovan file? Leave it. She left it. When the door closed behind her, he sat alone in the conference room and looked at the file and thought about the fact that she had said no without a single qualifying clause. No, not that I knew of. No, I don't think so. Just no, clean and simple, which was the answer of someone who had anticipated the question and prepared it. Marcus's preliminary report came in at 11:45. Adrian read it at his desk with the door locked and his phone on silent. And by the time he finished reading it, his hand was resting on the desk with such controlled stillness that his assistant, coming to the door and then thinking better of it when she saw his face through the glass, turned around and left without knocking. It was not complete. Marcus had flagged it as preliminary, partial, the beginning of a thread. But even the beginning was enough. Selena had been in contact with 2 photographers from a celebrity gossip outlet, the same outlet that had run 3 separate photo pieces on Adrian over the last 8 months, pieces that Selena had forwarded to him each time with brief messages about managing public image. The contact had not been through company channels. She had used a personal email address associated with a name that was not her own, a name that a basic search revealed was registered to a shell account created 14 months ago. 14 months ago, 2 months after she started working for him. One of the photographers had been at the Galleria yesterday. Adrian sat with this information for a long time. Then he called Marcus. "The jewelry trip," he said. "Was there a photographer in the mall?" "Yes, I identified him from the footage about an hour ago. His name is—" "Don't need the name yet. Was he positioned in the atrium?" "He was. He had a position near the fountain with a clear angle on the Morel entrance. He got 7 shots before you and Miss Hart left the boutique." A pause. "The shots have already been submitted to a gossip outlet. They're being held pending editorial review, which means they'll publish within 48 hours, Adrian said. "Yes." He closed his eyes. "Marcus, where was the photographer positioned relative to my wife?" A short silence. He heard Marcus pulling footage. 11 feet to her left, Marcus said. She walked within 6 feet of him when she left through the east exit. Another pause, and this one had a different quality. "Adrian. She didn't know he was there, but he stopped." "He what?" "He got a shot of her leaving, her face. He caught the moment she was removing her ring." A beat. "It's in the submission package." Adrian said nothing. The implications arranged themselves in order of cruelty. Selena had staged a scene for his wife to witness. She had positioned a photographer to document it. She had planned not only for Celeste to see the apparent intimacy, but to have that image paired in a media story with a photograph of Celeste's devastated exit, complete with the ring removal, for maximum damage. She hadn't just wanted Celeste to leave. She had wanted to make sure she couldn't come back without the whole world seeing what she had walked away from. He stood up from his desk. I went to the window and he stood there looking at the city below, the traffic moving in its small, orderly lines, people going where they were going, completely uninvolved in the particular catastrophe of his life today. He reached into his breast pocket and touched the ring. Still there. Cool and light and impossibly heavy. The photos could be killed. He had the reach to do it. He could have every copy pulled from every server and every photographer contract reviewed and every editorial decision reversed before end of business. That was not the problem. The problem was that killing the photos required him to call in the kind of debt that couldn't be repaid casually, and it would leave a trace, and the trace would eventually make its way somewhere. And none of it brought Celeste back. That was the thing none of his reach could fix. The man who had stopped global supply chains with a phone call could not make his wife pick up the phone. The man who could end careers before noon could not undo 40 seconds in a marble atrium. His assistant knocked. He told her to hold everything. He pulled up the full preliminary report on his tablet and read through it a second time, slower, looking for what he'd missed the first time. Buried in the calendar records, which Marcus had obtained through an internal IT request that technically required approval from 3 departments, all of which Adrian had authorized simultaneously in a single message, was a detail that made him stop reading. 6 weeks ago, Selena had called Celeste's private number. Celeste's number that did not appear on any company document. The number that Celeste had given to family and close friends, and had kept entirely separate from any public record. The number Selena should not have had any way to find. She had called it. Celeste had not answered. There was no voicemail. He stared at this for a very long time. He thought about the last 6 weeks. He thought about Celeste getting quieter. He thought about her eyes sometimes going somewhere in the middle of dinner, somewhere internal and closed. He had told himself it was because of the distance between them. He had told himself she was processing something, going through something, and that when she was ready, she would bring it to him. He had not asked. He had not pushed. He had assumed she would come to him, and in his assumption, he had left her completely alone with whatever Selena had put in her head, with an unanswered phone call that he was only finding out about now. He put the tablet down. He pressed both hands flat on the desk and breathed. The thought that crossed his mind then was not about Selena. It was not about photographers or evidence or corporate investigations. It was simple and precise, and it cut through everything else like a wire through ice. He had been absent from his own marriage for 9 months. Not because of Selena. Not entirely. Selena had exploited a distance that already existed. She had not created the silence at dinner. She had not made him stop reaching for his wife's hand. She had seen a gap, and she had walked into it, and she had worked it, professionally and methodically, and with the patience of someone who had planned this for a very long time. But the gap had been real. He had made it. And now Celeste was gone, and the photographs were going to publish in less than 48 hours. And somewhere in this city, his wife was in a borrowed room in someone else's apartment, thinking that the man she had married for 9 years had simply chosen another woman and moved on. He picked up his phone. He called Marcus. "I need everything," he said. "Not preliminary. Everything. I need the full picture within 24 hours. "Understood." "And Marcus?" "Yeah." "Find her." His voice was very quiet. Not a command the way his commands usually were. Something rawer than that. "Don't approach. Don't make contact. Just find her, and make sure she's safe, and tell me where she is." A pause that lasted just long enough to communicate that Marcus understood the difference between this request and every other request he had ever received. "I'll find her," Marcus said. Adrian ended the call. He looked at the empty chair across from his desk, the visitor chair, the one no one was sitting in. And he thought about Celeste's note, about the specific sentence that had not left him since he read it, the one he kept returning to the way a tongue returns to a cut inside the mouth. "The woman I married would never beg to stay where she isn't chosen." She had not said he had stopped choosing her. She had not accused him. She had simply described the woman she was, and what that woman could and could not do. And she had walked out of a life that had stopped feeling like a choice. He reached for the ring in his pocket, held it in his closed fist. Outside, the city went on doing what the city did, indifferent and enormous and completely unconcerned with the very specific ruin of a man sitting alone in a locked office, holding a platinum ring that had just become the most important object in his possession. 41 floors below, in a parking structure that fed into a street Adrian's cameras didn't cover, a black SUV that Mila Grant had borrowed from her cousin pulled out into traffic and headed toward a private residential building in the West Quarter where a woman named Ja Sabara had just unlocked the door to her guest room and told Celeste to take as long as she needed. And Celeste Rowan had walked into that small room with its single window and its narrow bed and had sat down on the edge of the mattress and put her face in her hands. And for the first time since she had watched a necklace being clasped around another woman's throat, she had let herself feel all of it. Not for long, just enough to know it was real. Then she had wiped her face, straightened up, and begun making the kind of plans that a woman makes when she knows, with complete certainty, that there is no going back. He read the text 4 times. Not because the words were complicated. 6 words were not complicated. "She's filing Monday. Don't contact her." He read it 4 times because each time he finished reading it, he expected something in it to change, some secondary meaning to surface, some qualifier that would make the deadline something other than what it was. Nothing changed. Monday was 3 days away. He put the phone face down on his desk and sat very still for a moment, and then he picked it up again and looked at the number. It wasn't Patricia Hale's number. He had that now, from the earlier text. This was a different number. Unknown. The kind of number that existed once for a single purpose and then stopped existing. He thought about who had sent it, not Celeste. Celeste would not have sent it. The specific language, "don't contact her," not "don't contact me," was someone speaking on her behalf, not for themselves. It could have been Mila. It could have been the attorney. It could have been Joss Sabara, whose name he had in his notes from the Renwick building lead. He forwarded it to Marcus with a single question: who sent this? Then he stood up from his desk and went to the window and looked at the city below and thought about 3 days in a way that was different from how he usually thought about time. He was a man who operated in weeks and quarters and fiscal years. 3 days was usually nothing. 3 days was a weekend. 3 days was now the entire remaining length of his marriage. Marcus called back in 11 minutes. "The number is registered to a prepaid," Marcus said. "Purchased in cash from a convenience store in the East Quarter 2 days ago. It sent exactly one message. Yours." "Mila," Adrian said. "Probably. Untraceable by design, which means someone either coached her or she thought of it herself. And based on what I know about Mila Grant, she thought of it herself." He turned away from the window. "What do I have?" he said. "In terms of the evidence package, what can I put in front of Celeste right now that would give her the full picture?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that was doing math. "The camera footage from the Galleria is clean," Marcus said. "You can see Selena initiating every contact, the hair adjustment, the necklace, the positioning. All of it started with her, and you were reactive or passive in every instance." "What about the photographer, Rusk?" "I have his communications with the Shell account, enough to establish a direct line between Selena and the staged documentation. But some of it is going to require a forensic digital analyst to authenticate for anything beyond internal use." "How long does that take?" "Done right? A week minimum." "I don't have a week." "I know." "What else?" "The call to Celeste's private number. I have the record of the call, but I don't have content because there was no voicemail left and no recording. I can prove Selena made the call. I can't prove what she intended by it." "It establishes pattern." "It contributes to pattern. It's not enough alone." Adrian walked to his desk and sat down. "The calendar records," he said. "The events she scheduled, the ones where she positioned us for the photographers. I have 6 confirmed instances over 9 months where she scheduled appearances, and there's documented contact between her Shell account and various photographers prior to each one. 3 of those photographers were paid through a third party that I've traced back to a personal account she opened 14 months ago." "That's something." "That's significant," Marcus said. "That establishes premeditation over a sustained period. It's the strongest piece." "Can you have it compiled into a package tonight?" A pause. "I can have it by midnight." "Do it." He ended the call. The problem was not the evidence. The evidence was there, or enough of it was there, and the rest was buildable. The problem was delivery. The problem was that the woman he needed to deliver it to had an attorney who was her designated point of contact and had made it clear, through a prepaid phone purchased in cash from a convenience store in the East Quarter, that she did not want to hear from him. He could not go around Patricia Hale without making himself look exactly like the kind of husband who needed to be divorced. He could not send the evidence through legal channels in time, because legal channels did not operate on 3-day timelines when the other side had already established position. He needed a path that did not exist yet. He pulled out a legal pad. He still used legal pads. This had always mildly amused Celeste, who had said once that he was the most technologically powerful man she knew who still wrote on paper, and he had told her there were things he didn't want on any server anywhere, and he wrote down everything he had and everything he still needed and the space between them, and then he looked at that space and thought. The answer, when it came from an unlikely direction. He thought about the 6 weeks before the Galleria. He thought about the phone call Selena had made to Celeste's private number. He thought about what Celeste had done in the 6 weeks following, the way she had gotten quieter, the way her eyes sometimes went somewhere during dinner, the way she had stopped reaching across the table. He had assumed she'd been processing the distance in the marriage. What if she'd been processing something else? What if the call had not been unanswered? He picked up his phone and called Marcus again. "The call Selena made to Celeste's number 6 weeks ago," he said. "You said Celeste didn't answer." "No voicemail left," Marcus said. "I pulled the record. Pull it again. Look at the duration." A pause. He heard typing. "The call lasted 47 seconds, Marcus said. A 47-second unanswered call would have gone to voicemail at 20 seconds. Either the voicemail was full or Celeste had picked up. "She answered," Adrian said. Another pause. "The record shows no voicemail deposit. If she answered, the conversation lasted 47 seconds and there's no content record because it was a direct call, not through any monitored channel. 47 seconds. What do you say in 47 seconds that makes a woman go quiet for 6 weeks? He thought about it. Then he stopped thinking about what had been said and started thinking about what it would mean if he could prove the call happened and Celeste had answered. It would mean she had been living for 6 weeks with something Selena had put in her head before the Galleria. It would mean the Galleria had not been the beginning. It had been the confirmation of something she had already been told. Selena had done this in 2 stages. First, she planted the doubt. Then she constructed the evidence. He needed to know what she had said. He called his own phone carrier's legal compliance line and had a Priority 1 request submitted within 15 minutes, citing a legal investigation that required call record authentication. It was not a request they could fulfill in 24 hours. The carrier's legal process required a minimum of 5 business days. But he was not asking the carrier. He was creating a paper trail that said he had tried. Then he called a man named Calvin Drex. Calvin Drex was not someone whose number appeared in Adrian's contact list under his real name. I was not someone Adrian called from his primary phone. He was a man who had worked for various intelligence organizations over a 30-year career and had retired from all of them into the specific kind of private practice that existed in the space between legal and illegal, and was navigated entirely by who you knew and what you could prove. They had done 2 pieces of business together in 7 years. Both times, Calvin had delivered exactly what he promised, and nothing more. "Calvin," Adrian said when the line connected, "I need a call record authenticated and a content reconstruction on a 47-second conversation from 6 weeks ago. Civilian call, domestic." Silence. Then, "And that's a narrow window for reconstruction." "I know." "The person on the receiving end, do you have access to them?" "No." "Then it's extremely narrow." Another pause. "The caller, do you have access?" "I have access to her devices." "Then it's not impossible." A considered pause. 24 hours. Cost is what it usually is. "Done," Adrian said. "Marcus Chen will coordinate the access." He ended the call. He sat back in his chair. He had set 4 things in motion. The evidence package Marcus was compiling, the carrier's compliance request, Calvin Drex's content reconstruction, and something he hadn't articulated yet even to himself, something forming at the edge of his planning, the understanding that all of this was infrastructure, that infrastructure alone would not cross the distance between him and Celeste, that at some point, with or without a perfect evidentiary package, he was going to have to stand in front of his wife and be a man talking to his wife, without lawyers and without leverage, and without anything except the truth and the hope that 9 years meant something she hadn't been able to fully walk away from yet. But he was not ready for that. He did not have the truth fully assembled yet. At 7:40 that evening, he was still in his office when Elena knocked and came in, looking like she had something to say that she wished she didn't have to. "There's a woman in the lobby," Elena said. "She doesn't have an appointment. She says her name is Dana Rusk. She says she's Daniel Rusk's sister, and she needs to speak with you directly." Adrian looked up. "Did she say about what?" "She said..." Elena paused, consulting whatever she had written down. "She said her brother is scared, and she thinks you need to know why." He looked at Elena for a moment. "Send her up," he said. Dana Rusk was 29 years old and looked like she had not slept well in several days. She was wearing clothes that suggested she had come from a workplace, scrubs under a jacket, a hospital, or a clinic, and she sat in the chair across from his desk with her hands clenched together on the surface, and she looked at him with the expression of someone who had argued with herself about coming here all day and was still not certain she'd made the right call. "Your brother pulled the Voss photos from the outlet," Adrian said. "I know that much." "He pulled them because Selena Hart called him and told him to," Dana said. Her voice was tight, controlled, the voice of someone keeping emotion on a very short leash. "He pulled them because she told him there would be more money if he did." She paused. "But she didn't tell him about the other ones." Adrian kept his face still. "The other ones," he said. "There's a photographer named Garen Moss. He works for a different agency. He was at, 7, 8 different events over the last year. He was taking pictures of you and Miss Hart at your husband's instruction." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Selena's instruction," he said. "Yes. But the photos Garen took weren't the ones that got submitted to the outlets. The ones that got submitted were the ones my brother took. She unclasped her hands and reclasped them. Garen's photos are different. He told me they show a different story. They show Miss Hart reaching for you when you were pulling back. They show her. She stopped. He sent me 3 of them. I have them on my phone. She put the phone on the desk. He looked at the photos. 3 images, all from events over the past several months. In the first, Selena's hand was on his arm, and the angle was clear enough to see that his body was angled away, that his weight was shifted back, that he was in the motion of disengaging. In the second, taken at some outdoor event he didn't immediately place, Selena was leaning into his shoulder, and his expression, caught in a natural moment rather than a posed one, was the expression of a man who was somewhere else in his head entirely. Distracted, present in body, absent in every other way. Not the expression of a man engaged in something romantic. The expression of a man tolerating. The third photo. The third photo was from Ashford Galleria. It was taken from a different angle than Rusk's position. Higher, from an upper level, a wide shot that showed the boutique interior and the atrium simultaneously. It showed Selena reaching for Adrian's collar. It showed Adrian's slight backward shift. And in the lower left corner of the frame, at the edge of the atrium, it showed 2 women standing still, one of them looking across the space with an expression that even from this distance was unmistakable. Celeste. And 6 feet to her left, a man with a camera, Rusk, positioned exactly where Selena had positioned him, getting the shot of Celeste's exit that Selena had intended to pair with the boutique photographs for maximum narrative damage. He had the wider shot. Garen Moss, from an upper level without any idea what he was documenting, had captured the entire architecture of it in a single frame. He looked up at Dana Rusk. "Why is your brother scared?" he said. She looked at her phone on the desk. "Because Garen Moss is missing," she said. The word missing landed differently than most words. "Since when?" Adrian said. "Since yesterday morning. He told Daniel 3 days ago that he had photos that told the real story of what happened and that he was thinking about selling them to a different outlet, a legitimate one, not a gossip site. He wanted to do the right thing. He said he didn't know what he'd been hired for when he took the assignment, and he didn't like what it turned out to be." She stopped. Her hands were shaking slightly now, just slightly, and she was pressing them together to control it. Daniel told him to be careful. Garen said he wasn't worried, that it was just photos, that nobody got hurt over photos. She stopped. Adrian looked at her. "And yesterday morning?" he said. "He didn't show up to a job. He doesn't answer his phone, his apartment." She swallowed. Daniel went to his apartment and it was fine, like normal, like he just stepped out. His camera gear was there, his laptop. She looked at Adrian directly. His laptop was there, but it had been wiped, completely, like it had never had anything on it. Adrian sat back in his chair. He looked at the phone on the desk with the 3 photographs on the screen, and he thought very carefully about the person who would have known Garen Moss had those photographs, the person who had hired Garen Moss in the first place. Selena Hart. He had underestimated her. He had understood her as an opportunist, an obsessive, a woman who had built an elaborate social fiction over 18 months to position herself in someone else's life. He had thought of her actions as strategic, yes, premeditated, yes, but essentially civilian. The actions of a brilliant, unscrupulous professional who had identified a target and pursued it through manipulation rather than force. He had not thought of her as someone capable of making a man disappear. But then, he had not been thinking clearly about Selena Hart from the beginning. He had not been thinking about her at all, which was precisely what she had counted on. He stood up. "Dana," he said, "I need you to send those 3 photographs to this address." He wrote Marcus's secure email on a card and slid it across the desk. "And I need you to tell me everything your brother told you about his interactions with Selena Hart. Names, dates, locations, payment methods, everything." "Is Daniel in danger?" she said. He looked at her. I was a man who had spent his adult life in an environment where truth and danger were related concepts. He had learned not to lie to frightened people in moments like this because frightened people making decisions based on false reassurance made worse decisions. "I don't know yet," he said, "but I'm going to find out, and I need you to trust that I have the ability to act on what I find." He paused. "Can you do that?" She nodded. "Once. Quick." "Then start talking," he said. She talked for 40 minutes. He listened and wrote on the legal pad and asked 3 questions during that time, and they were precise questions, the kind that went to specific details he needed confirmed rather than elaborated. By the time she finished, he had a timeline that extended back further than Marcus's investigation had reached, and 2 names he hadn't had before. Intermediaries Selena had used for the financial side of her arrangements with the photographers, one of whom, based on Dana's description, had connections to a network that Adrian recognized from entirely different professional context. This was no longer a case of a manipulative executive engineering a domestic situation. This had edges he had not anticipated. He called Marcus the moment Dana left. "Garen Moss," he said, "photographer. Find him." "That's a new name," Marcus said. "He's missing since yesterday." His laptop was wiped. He had photographs that contradicted the Selena narrative, and she knew he had them. He paused. "Marcus, one of the names Dana Rusk gave me as a Selena intermediary is Chorus Vane." A silence that lasted exactly long enough to communicate that Marcus understood the implications. Chorus Vane was not a name that existed in any civilian database. It was a name that existed in the kind of database that required clearance to access, in the operational files of organizations that did not use their real names publicly. He had surfaced twice on the periphery of Adrian's own organization's intelligence network. Never directly, always 1 or 2 degrees of separation removed, always in connection with operations that had a particular quality: precision, deniability, clean disappearances. "You're sure?" Marcus said. Dana described him specifically. The physical description matches, the operational style matches, and the financial routing she described is consistent. Another silence. "If Selena is connected to Vane," Marcus said, "then she isn't just an executive who got obsessed with her employer." "No," Adrian said, "she isn't. Someone put her there." "Someone put her there," he confirmed. He stood at his office window again, looking at the city, and he felt the shape of the thing change under his hands. The story he had been telling himself, about Selena, about obsession, about an elaborately manufactured social situation, was not wrong, but it was incomplete. It was the visible surface of something with much larger architecture beneath it. Someone had placed Selena Hart in his organization. Someone had given her access to resources, the shell accounts, the photographer networks, the connection to a man like Chorus Vane, that a secretary, however brilliant, would not have independently. Someone had invested 18 months and significant operational capacity into creating a specific outcome. Not just Adrian's marriage ending, but ending in a way that was publicly documented, that created a permanent record of infidelity and abandonment, that did maximum damage to a specific thing. What thing? He stood at the window and he went back through 18 months of decisions. His company's acquisitions, his legal disputes, the contracts he had won and the ones he had walked away from, the enemies he knew about and the ones he might not know about yet. There were several candidates in the second category. He was still sorting through them when his phone rang. The number was Celeste's. He stared at it. For a fraction of a second that felt much longer than it was, he thought about the implications. She was calling him. After the prepaid text. After the attorney filing. She was calling him at 9:43 at night, and he did not know what that meant, but he picked up before he could think too much about it. "Celeste," he said. A pause. "I need to know something," she said. Her voice was steady. Not warm, not angry. Steady in the way that things are steady when they have been held together by force. "Okay," he said. "Did you know she called me?" He stopped. "When?" he said, though he already knew. 6 weeks ago." A pause. "She called my private number, Adrian. The one you said only people we trusted had. She called it and I answered because I didn't recognize the number and I thought maybe it was one of my mother's doctors." Another pause. Shorter this time. "It was Selena." He pressed his hand flat against the window glass. "What did she say?" he said. The silence lasted 3 seconds. "She said she was calling because she felt I deserved to know. She said she felt terrible about the situation. She said that she and you that it had been going on for several months, and that she understood if I needed time, but that she wanted me to hear it from her rather than finding out in some other way." He closed his eyes. "She said she still respected me," Celeste continued, and her voice had a quality to it now that he recognized. The quality of someone reading from a wound rather than speaking from one, describing something that has been examined so many times it has become almost clinical. She said she hoped I would be okay. Then she said goodbye. A pause. 47 seconds. He opened his eyes. Celeste, he said. I didn't believe her, Celeste said, and this stopped him. I want you to know that. I didn't believe her. There was nothing I could point to, no concrete evidence, but I knew you, or I thought I did. And something in her voice was, she paused. Something was off. So I didn't believe her. A breath. And then I saw what I saw in the Galleria, and I had to decide whether the thing I had believed about you was real or whether the evidence in front of my eyes was real. She stopped. You chose the evidence, he said. I chose what I could see, she said. He turned away from the window. The call was a lie, he said. It didn't happen the way she described. None of it happened the way she described. I can prove that, Celeste. I have footage. I have financial records. I have... Adrian. He stopped. Why are you telling me this tonight? She said. My attorney told you not to contact me. You called me, he said. Another pause. I called you, she said, almost to herself, like she had just remembered why. Why did you call me? He said very carefully. The silence that followed was the longest yet. Because Mila saw something on the news an hour ago, Celeste said finally. And she showed me. And I need to know if it's true. He went still. What did Mila see? They're saying a photographer is missing, a man named Garen Moss. They're saying he had photographs related to the story the tabloids have been running about you and about you. She paused. They're saying the photographs he had told a different story. They're saying he was going to release them and now he's gone. He thought about Dana Rusk sitting across from him 45 minutes ago with shaking hands. It's true, he said. He's missing. What does that mean? Celeste said. Her voice had changed. Not afraid exactly, but the steadiness had a different quality now. Less controlled, more effortful. Adrian, what does this actually mean? How deep does this go? He looked at the legal pad on his desk. The names, the connections, the shape of something that went much further down than a jealous secretary. I don't know yet, he said, but I need you to listen to me very carefully. I'm listening. I think Selena Hart was placed in my organization. I think someone put her there deliberately, and I think what happened between us, what she made you see, was engineered to cause a specific outcome that benefits someone who is not Selena. He stopped. Let that settle. I don't know who yet. I'm working on it. But until I know, I need you to understand that you may not be safe, and that Mila may not be safe, and that the people who made a photographer disappear are the same people who spent 18 months building a situation designed to look like my affair. The silence on the other end of the line was complete. Celeste, he said, are you still there? Yes, she said. Her voice was quiet. I'm here. Tell me where you are. A very long pause. He didn't push it. He had learned, over 9 years, that there were moments when pushing Celeste produced the opposite of what you needed, when the only thing that worked was waiting and meaning it. I'm at Joss's, she said. The Renwick building. Marcus had been right. I need to move you tonight, he said. Somewhere that isn't connected to your name or Joss's name or anyone who can be traced back to you. I need to do it quietly, and I need you to trust me enough to let me. Another silence. I have to think about that, she said. I know. I need to talk to Patricia. Okay. And Mila. Okay. I'm not... She stopped, started again. I'm not agreeing to anything else. I'm not saying this changes what I'm filing. I'm saying I need to think about the safety piece and talk to my attorney. That's enough, he said. That's all I'm asking. Don't send anyone to the Renwick without calling me first, she said. I mean it, Adrian. If I see any of your security people without warning, I will... I know, he said. I'll call first, I promise. A pause. I have to go, she said. Okay. Adrian. Yeah. If you're lying to me about any of this... She stopped. The sentence didn't finish. It didn't need to. I know, he said. She ended the call. He stood in the middle of his office with the phone in his hand and the city outside the window doing its city things. indifferent and enormous. And he thought about Celeste in Josabara's guest room at the Renwick building, sitting on the edge of a bed in borrowed space, having just called the man she was in the process of divorcing because a missing photographer had made her doubt the narrative she had constructed to survive the last 3 days. He thought about what it had cost her to make that call. He thought about the 47 seconds. About Selena's voice on a phone, carefully constructed, deployed like a tool. About Celeste not believing her and then believing her eyes instead, and about the devastating simplicity of that sequence. The lie first, to prepare the ground, and then the image, to confirm what the lie had planted. He thought about Garen Moss, and a wiped laptop, and a man named Corus Vane, and the much larger thing that was still assembling itself in the dark, somewhere below everything he could currently see. He pulled up Marcus's number. "She's at the Renwick," he said when Marcus answered. "Building, not apartment number. I told her no security without warning. She needs to agree to be moved first." "Understood." A pause. "The Moss situation. The news picked it up." "I know. It reached her." He walked to the window again, the same city, but the view felt different now, wider, more exposed. "Marcus, I need you to start looking at something bigger than Selena. She was placed. I need to know by who and why and what the intended outcome was beyond the marriage." A pause that had real weight in it. "That's a different kind of investigation," Marcus said. "I know what kind of investigation it is," Adrian said. "I need you to do it anyway. If someone put Selena there intentionally, and that someone has access to Vane, then we're not talking about a corporate competitor," Marcus said. "We're talking about—" "I know what we're talking about," Adrian said quietly. Marcus was silent for a moment. "All right," he said. "I'll start tonight." Adrian ended the call. He looked at the city. 3 days ago his marriage had been quietly ending, and he hadn't fully noticed. 2 days ago his wife had disappeared. Yesterday he had dismantled a manipulative executive and begun assembling evidence. Today, a photographer had gone missing, and a phone call at 9:43 had cracked a door. He hadn't expected to crack, and behind that door was something vastly more dangerous than anything he had been looking at. He reached into his breast pocket. The ring was still there. He held it in his closed hand and felt the weight of it, and thought about the irony, that the thing that might bring Celeste back was not the evidence of Selena's manipulation, but the larger danger that surrounded it. That the one thing that might make her trust him again was also the one thing that put her at risk. That in order to protect his wife, he was going to have to pull her back into a world she had chosen him despite. A world she had made peace with at 28 years old in a kitchen on the understanding that he would always keep her safe. He had promised her that. She had been in danger for 6 weeks, possibly longer. And he had not known. He put the ring back in his pocket. He sat down at his desk. He opened the legal pad to a new page and he wrote one question at the top, large and clear, the question that everything else had to answer before any of it could move forward. Who benefits from destroying this marriage? Then he started writing names. The list had 11 names on it by midnight. Adrian looked at them and crossed out 4 immediately. Men he had defeated too completely to still be dangerous. Enemies whose capacity for this kind of operation he had personally dismantled in ways he was certain of. That left 7. He stared at the 7 names for a long time, turning each one over in his mind the way you turn a stone to see what's living underneath. And by 1 in the morning, he had circled 2. Raymond Cole. And beneath that, underlined twice, Victor said Raymond Cole was a man Adrian had taken a shipping logistics contract from 3 years ago. Not aggressively, not through any underhanded method, simply by being the better offer. But the contract had represented 40% of Colt's operational revenue, and losing it had begun a collapse that was still ongoing. A man watching his empire die by degrees had motive. The timeline fit. Selena had been placed 14 months ago, and Colt's situation had become genuinely desperate around that time. Victor said was different. Victor said was the kind of name that appeared in security briefings that Adrian received from his own intelligence network. Briefings that described activities in specific geographic regions where certain kinds of freight moved, freight that Adrian's legitimate logistics operations intersected with in ways that were impossible to entirely avoid. Esed had sent a representative to a meeting 2 years ago. Adrian had declined the meeting. Esed had sent a second representative 6 months later. Adrian had declined again, more clearly. The kind of man who sent representatives twice and was declined twice did not simply move on. He circled Victor Said's name a second time. He called Marcus at 1:17 in the morning. "Two names," Adrian said, "Raymond Colt and Victor Said. I need everything that connects to either of them over the last 24 months, with specific attention to any activity in the 14 months that aligns with Selena's placement in my organization." Marcus's voice had the particular flatness of someone who has been working without sleep and is running on technical discipline alone. Colt is accessible. Said is harder. The networks around Said don't leave paper trails we can pull through normal channels. "Use abnormal channels," Adrian said. "That's going to have costs." "I know what it costs," he said. "Do it." He put the phone down. He thought about Celeste at the Renwick. He thought about her talking to Patricia Hale, talking to Mila, deciding what the safety question meant against the background of everything else she was deciding. He thought about her voice on the phone, the steadiness of it, how hard she was working to maintain it, the moment where it had shifted when she talked about the 47 seconds. He thought about Selena saying, "I still respect you," to a woman whose number she had obtained illegally before deploying her like a piece in a game Celeste hadn't known she was playing. He stood up, put on his jacket, and left the office. The city at 1 in the morning had its own specific texture. The clubs still going, the late shift workers moving between positions, the infrastructure of the place operating in the hours when most of its population was unconscious. His driver was waiting. He had not called ahead. The driver, whose name was Pavel, and who had been driving for Adrian for 5 years, had learned not to ask about destinations until Adrian provided them. "Renwick Building," Adrian said. Pavel pulled into traffic without a word. He called Celeste from the car. She answered on the second ring, which told him she had not been sleeping. "I'm coming to you," he said. "I said I'd call first. I'm calling." A pause. "It's 1 in the morning," she said. "I know. I have things to tell you that can't wait until morning, not because of us, because of the safety situation." Another pause. "How far are you?" she said. 8 minutes. The pause lasted about 4 of those 8 minutes in his head, though it was actually considerably shorter. "Front entrance," she said. "I'll tell the overnight desk." She ended the call. He sat in the back of the car and looked at the city passing and thought about what he was doing, going to his wife, whom he had not spoken to face in 4 days, in a building she was hiding in, at 1 in the morning, to tell her that the thing that had ended their marriage was the surface event of something that threatened both of them in ways that were not yet fully mapped. This was not how he had imagined this conversation. He had not imagined this conversation. He had been focused on evidence, on documentation, on the careful legal and investigative infrastructure of proving what Selena had done. He had not let himself think past that to the actual moment of standing in front of Celeste, because the actual moment was the part he had no framework for, no professional competence to deploy, no resource that helped. Pavel stopped at the Renwick entrance. Adrian got out. The overnight desk attendant was a young man who looked up when Adrian came in and said, with the careful neutrality of someone who had been briefed, that Ms. Ibarra's guest was expecting him, 14th floor, apartment 1407. He took the elevator up. He knocked. Joss opened the door in her paint-stained overalls because Joss Ibarra was apparently always in paint-stained overalls, and she looked at him with an expression that was not quite hostile and not quite welcoming, more the expression of someone standing at the intersection of their loyalty to their friend and their fundamental decency toward another human being and trying to hold both at once. "She's in the kitchen," Joss said. He came in. The apartment was the apartment of someone who took up space fully and without apology. Canvases in various stages against every available wall, books stacked on every flat surface, the particular organized chaos of a creative person who knows exactly where everything is and would be lost in tidiness. It smelled like oil paint and coffee and something faintly botanical. Celeste was at the kitchen table. She was wearing what she'd worn to bed, gray sweatpants and a white long-sleeved shirt, and her hair was loose, and she had both hands wrapped around a coffee mug, and she looked up when he came in, and he looked at her, and neither of them said anything for a moment. She looked tired, not destroyed, not broken, but deeply, bone-specifically tired, the way people look when they have been making very hard decisions for 4 days without adequate sleep. She also looked like herself, more like herself than he had seen in months, which was an irony that he filed away without examining right now. Joss said, "I'll be in the studio." which was the most tactful exit he had seen in recent memory. And then she was gone, and the kitchen door was technically still open, but the sound of a door being respectfully not quite closed communicated clearly. He sat down across from her. She did not offer him coffee. He did not ask for it. She looked at him. "Tell me," she said. He told her. All of it, in order. The evidence Marcus had compiled. The photographer Rusk, Dana Rusk, Garen Moss and the wiped laptop, the shell accounts and the 18-month pattern, the 6-event documentation of Selena positioning herself physically while he was passive or disengaged, the 47-second call and what it was and what it wasn't, the name Chorus Vane, the 2 circled names on his legal pad. He did not editorialize. He did not ask her to feel anything specific about any of it. He put it in front of her the way he would put a document in front of anyone whose judgment he respected, and then he waited. She listened the way she listened to hard things, very still, eyes steady, hands not moving. Once, when he described the 3rd photograph Garen Moss had taken, the wide shot from the upper level of the Galleria that showed the boutique and the atrium and Celeste at the edge of it, and Rusk 6 feet to her left, when he described what that photograph documented, something moved across her face that was not an expression he had a name for, something between vindication and devastation. The feeling of a person finding out they were right about the wrong thing. When he finished, she sat for a while without speaking. Then she said, "She called me and said she felt terrible." "I know." She said she still respected me. Celeste looked at the table. She had already hired a photographer to document whatever I did when I found out. She called me to seed the doubt so that when I saw the pictures, I'd already have a context to put them in, and then she was going to... She stopped. She was going to publish the photograph of me taking my ring off. Yes. As evidence of what she'd accomplished. Yes. Celeste set her coffee mug down very carefully on the table. She placed it with a precision that suggested she was concentrating on the action of placing it in order to not concentrate on something else. "And the missing photographer," she said, "Garen Moss." "I have people looking," Adrian said. "Chorus Vane," she said, the name flat in her mouth. "You know who that is?" "I know what that name represents in certain operational contexts," he said carefully. She looked at him directly. "Adrian, don't manage me, not tonight." Her voice was quiet, but the edge in it was real. "Is this man dangerous?" "Yes," he said. "To you. To anyone connected to the Moss situation. Potentially to anyone connected to me who becomes inconvenient." He held her gaze. "Which means you." She sat with that. "Okay," she said finally. The word was small and complete, the way she said okay when she had arrived at an acceptance of something she couldn't change. "So what do we do?" We landed without emphasis, without apparent awareness. And he did not point it out because pointing it out would have made her aware of it, and she might have taken it back and he needed it. "Tonight, I need to move you," he said. "Somewhere that isn't connected to Joss or Mila or your attorney. Somewhere that requires knowing who I am to identify." "You mean one of your properties?" "Yes." She looked at the table. "That's going to look like..." She stopped. "Patricia is going to have opinions about me staying at one of your properties." "I know, but Patricia Hale's opinions about our legal situation are not the relevant variable right now. What's relevant is that Chorus Vane exists and Garen Moss is missing, and you are a person who can be used against me." He paused. "And I am not willing for that to happen." She looked at him. He looked back. The kitchen was quiet, and the clock on Joss's stove said 1:42, and somewhere in the apartment music was playing very quietly from what was probably the studio, something without words, Joss's private soundtrack for the deep hours. "I need to call Patricia," Celeste said. "Okay. And I need you to step out of the kitchen while I do it." He stood up immediately. He stood in the small corridor outside the kitchen and listened to Joss's wordless music from the studio and looked at a canvas leaning against the wall that showed something that was either a landscape or an abstract, or both depending on how you looked at it, and he stood with his hands at his sides and waited. The call lasted 9 minutes. When Celeste came to the kitchen doorway, she had her arms crossed over her chest, not defensively, more like holding herself steady. "Patricia says if I go to your property, it complicates the asset separation filing," she said. "She says she needs documentation that this is a security arrangement and not a reconciliation." Grant Fielding can produce that documentation in an hour, he said. Written security protocol, separate from any marital assets consideration. Patricia Hale signs off on it as legal acknowledgement of extraordinary circumstance. She looked at him for a moment. You had that ready, she said. I thought you might need it. She uncrossed her arms. I'll get my bags, she said. He texted Marcus while she packed and had a location secured within 6 minutes. A private residence in the North Quarter that was held under a company name 4 layers removed from anything publicly connected to him. Marcus would have security on the building within the hour. He texted Pavel to bring a second vehicle, unmarked. Joss came out of the studio when Celeste appeared with her suitcases. The two women looked at each other the way women look at each other when there are years of friendship and a very specific situation in the immediate foreground and no adequate language for either. Call me, Joss said. I will, Celeste said. Joss looked at Adrian. The expression was clearer now. Not hostile, not welcoming. Watchful. The look of someone who was suspending judgment and wanted him to understand that the suspension was provisional. He nodded at her. She nodded back. In the elevator, with the 2 suitcases between them taking up most of the floor space, Celeste stood against the far wall, and he stood near the door and they did not speak, and the elevator descended, and at some point on the way down she said, to the middle distance rather than to him, I haven't changed my mind about the filing. I know, he said. I just need to be clear about that. You're clear, he said. The elevator opened. They went into the lobby and out into the night air, which was cool and sharp, the specific quality of urban air at 2 in the morning when most of the heat of the day has finally gone. And Pavel was waiting with the second vehicle, a dark blue sedan that had no plates yet because Marcus had arranged it in the last 8 minutes. And Adrian held the door and Celeste got in, and he put her suitcases in the trunk and got in the other side, and Pavel drove. Celeste looked out the window. He looked at the back of Pavel's headrest. Halfway there, she said, The list of names, the people you think put her there, you said you'd circled too. Yes. Are you going to tell me who they are? He thought about it. One of them is a businessman with a damaged grievance, he said. The other is not a businessman. She turned her head and looked at him. How bad, she said. He met her eyes. Bad enough that I'm concerned about the timeline, he said. She held his gaze for a moment, then looked back out the window. He watched her profile in the passing streetlight, the line of her jaw, the place where her neck met her shoulder, the specific angle of her looking at something he couldn't see. He had missed her face, not abstractly, specifically. This face, this particular set of features that he had looked at across tables and in half-dark bedrooms and in photographs on his phone for 9 years, and had stopped seeing somewhere in the accumulation of distance. And now that he was looking at it again, he felt the loss of all those months of not looking like a physical thing, a weight in his chest, not painful exactly, but present. The sedan stopped at a building he had not been to in over a year. It was an 8-unit building, privately owned, full occupancy of people unconnected to him. A deliberate choice for exactly this kind of situation. The unit he kept was on the 3rd floor. It was furnished adequately and without personality. The kind of place you could stay in without leaving a trace of yourself. Marcus's security was already in position. He could identify them from the car, 3 of them, placed where they were least visible and most effective. He had trained these people himself, and their positioning was correct. They went up. He unlocked the unit, and she went in ahead of him and looked around at the adequate, unfurnished personality of it, and he felt the slight absurdity of this. His wife standing in a safe house at 2 in the morning in the middle of divorcing him. But the absurdity was not the point, and he had learned a long time ago that life did not pause for absurdity. There are basics in the kitchen, he said. Anything you need, text me or tell Marcus. His number is in the phone on the counter. It's a clean phone, different from yours. Use it if you need to reach him. She turned and looked at him. Are you leaving? She said. Yes, he said. Unless you'd rather... No, you should go. She looked at him steadily. I need to sleep, and you need to keep working. He picked up his keys. He stopped at the door. He had several things he wanted to say. He had been accumulating them for 4 days, the things that built up when you have something you need to say to a specific person and no access to that person. He was aware that this was not the moment for most of them, that the moment for most of them was not this week, was possibly not for a long time, was contingent on things that had not resolved yet. He said the one thing that was unconditional. I should have been paying attention, he said. Before all of this. The distance, the dinners. I should have seen you were carrying something, and I should have asked. He paused. That part wasn't Selena. That was me. She looked at him for a long moment. Yes, she said. It was. He nodded. He left. In the car heading back toward the office, he called Marcus. She's in, he said. Building is secure? Secure, I'll have overnight rotation on it. The Colt and Said investigation. Where are we? Colt's financials from the last 20 months show 2 significant cash disbursements, significant enough to fund what we're describing, through a holding company in Liechtenstein. I'm tracing the holding company. I think I can have something definitive on Colt's involvement by morning. And Said? A pause. Said is slower. The network around Said doesn't leave the kind of traces we can pull with standard methods. Another pause. I did find something. Selena Hart's employment with you. Her background was verified by an agency, a specific vetting firm. I pulled the firm's registration, and one of its principals, a man named Drago Lev, surfaces in connection with Said's network in 2 separate intelligence reports from the last 5 years. So Said's people placed her, Adrian said. It looks like it. What does Said want? Adrian said, not rhetorically, genuinely. He sent representatives twice. I declined twice. What was the pitch? Access to your Central European logistics network, Marcus said, both times. The same ask, both times. Adrian thought about this. And if I'm disgraced, he said, if my marriage collapses publicly, with photographs with a documented narrative that I was conducting an affair, what happens to the contracts that depend on my reputation? Several would be voidable, Marcus said. The Meridian Group has a character clause in their primary contract with Voss Capital. If that clause is triggered, the contract goes to competitive rebid. A pause. Victor Said's logistics subsidiary has been in position to bid on Meridian for 2 years. He didn't want me ruined, Adrian said. He wanted my contracts. The reputational damage was a means to the contract terminations. The contract terminations were the goal. Adrian sat in the dark car and felt the clarity of this settle over him like cold water. It was elegant, in the way that truly vicious plans could be elegant. Not destroy Adrian Voss, that was too difficult and too visible. Instead, remove the thing that anchored his reputation, create the documented public record of a man who had betrayed his wife, who had conducted an affair, who had used his power to install a mistress in his own organization. Trigger the character clauses. Let the legitimate business world do the rest. Celeste was not the target. She was the instrument. She had been selected as the point of maximum leverage, not because of who she was, but because of what she represented. The human evidence of Adrian Voss's integrity, the one relationship in his life that existed outside his empire. The proof that there was a version of him that was loyal to something beyond power. Destroy the marriage, and you destroy the proof. Destroy the proof, and the character clauses write themselves. He felt something move through him that was not anger. It was past anger. It was the cold, precise thing that came after anger, the thing that he had learned as a young man was more useful and more dangerous than heat. Marcus, he said, I need to establish direct evidence connecting Said to Selena Hart by morning, not circumstantial, direct. That's not... I know what it is, Adrian said. Do it anyway. Adrian, if Said knows we're pulling on his thread this hard, he's going to... I know what he's going to do, Adrian said. That's why I need Celeste secure, and that's why I need this done before he knows we have it. A silence. 6 hours, Marcus said. Give me 6 hours. It was now 2:47 in the morning. 6 hours was 8:47. Patricia Hale's office opened at 9. He did the math without meaning to. He called Calvin Drex next. The content reconstruction, he said. The 47-second call. How close are you? I pulled her device access through the company network, Calvin said. There's a cloud sync from her personal phone to a tablet she used on company Wi-Fi. The call recording, a pause. She recorded it. Not from the receiving end, from her end. She recorded herself making the call. The air in the car changed quality. She recorded herself, he said. She recorded herself. I have 47 seconds of audio that I need to clean, but what I've heard in the raw version, Calvin paused. She scripted it. You can hear her reading, and at the end, before she kills the recording, you can hear her say, very quietly, to no one in the room, she says, "That's enough." He closed his eyes briefly. That's enough. Not referring to this conversation, referring to the recording. She had staged herself making the call, documented it, evidence for someone's review, evidence of a completed task. How long to clean the audio, he said. 3 hours? Maybe 2.5. 2.5, he said. That's what I need. He ended the call. He looked out the car window. The city was in its deepest quiet now, the specific hours between 2 and 4, where even cities that never sleep go somewhere in themselves. And the streets were almost empty, and the lights were the amber of street lamps, and the buildings were dark in their upper floors. And he thought about Celeste in the third-floor unit in the North Quarter, probably not sleeping yet, probably lying in a bed she didn't know with her eyes on a ceiling she didn't recognize. And he thought about 9 years and the smell of cedar and something floral, and the way she had looked at him across a kitchen table in Florence when they were 32 and 30, and the world was smaller, and the trouble was simpler. He thought about "That's enough" in Selena's voice, and the cold precision of what that recorded call represented. The documentation of a completed task submitted to someone who had assigned it. He thought about what that meant. Selena had not just executed a plan, she had been reporting to someone. Every step of this. The placement, the photography, the staged events, the phone call to Celeste, the Galleria, someone had known about in real time. Someone had been tracking completion. And that someone was still out there. And by now, possibly hours ago, when Selena was walked out of the building by security, that someone knew the plan had been exposed. His phone rang. Not Marcus. Not Calvin. Not any number he expected. The number on the screen was the number from the safe house, the clean phone he had left on the counter. He answered immediately. "Celeste," he said, "there's someone in the building." Her voice was controlled and very quiet. "Not your security people. Someone else. I heard them in the stairwell." He sat forward. "Are you in the apartment?" "Yes." I locked the deadbolt. "Don't open the door. Don't go near the windows. Get to the interior bathroom and lock that door too." He was already pulling up Marcus's number on his other phone. "Celeste, listen to me. Do exactly what I'm telling you and stay on the line." He heard her moving, quick, quiet footsteps. The sound of a door. "I'm in the bathroom," she said. He already had Marcus on the second phone. "Someone's in the building," he said before Marcus could speak. "North Quarter location, 3rd floor, now." "I have eyes on the building," Marcus said instantly, the sleep flatness gone from his voice, pure operational. "My people on East and West." A pause. Half a second. Someone came in through the parking structure access. Underground entry, camera blind spot. "I'm sending a sound through the phone from Celeste's end. Not loud, not dramatic. The very specific sound of a deadbolt being tested from the outside." Adrian, Celeste said. Her voice had not changed. It was still controlled, still quiet. But underneath the control was something he had never heard from her in 9 years. She was afraid. He was out of the car before Pavel had fully stopped, running toward a building that was 4 blocks away, which was 4 blocks too far, running anyway. Because there was nothing else his body could do with the fact that his wife was on the other side of a bathroom door, listening to someone test the lock of the apartment he had put her in for her protection, and he had been 4 blocks away doing everything else. He ran. His phone was in one hand, and he could hear Celeste breathing, and he could hear Marcus coordinating through the second phone, and he ran through the empty 247 streets of a city that did not care, and he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Not the cold, precise thing past anger, but something prior to all of that. Something without strategy or calculation. Something that was purely and completely fear. The building entrance was 30 seconds ahead. Through the phone, he heard Celeste's breath change. A sharp intake, quick, involuntary. And then a sound he could not immediately identify. And then her voice, not quiet anymore, not controlled. "Adrian." The door, and then the line went dead. He hit the building entrance at a full run, and the door was locked, and he put his shoulder into it anyway, once, and it held, and he pulled his keycard from his jacket pocket with hands that were completely steady, because his hands were always steady. This was the thing about him that people found unsettling, that his hands never shook regardless of what the rest of him was doing, and he swiped the card and the lock disengaged, and he was through. Stairwell, not the elevator. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his breathing controlled, his footsteps not. The sound of him going up echoing in the concrete shaft, and he was thinking while he ran, the part of his mind that never stopped processing, already calculating. The bathroom door was interior, solid core. The deadbolt was a grade 3. Whoever had come through that apartment door had either a key or a method. And if they had a key, that meant the building's security had been compromised before tonight, which meant this was planned, which meant 3rd floor. He came through the stairwell door and into the corridor, and the door to the unit was open. Not broken open. Open. The deadbolt engaged, but the door itself was standing open at a 30-degree angle, which meant someone had come through it with a key and had not bothered to close it behind them, which meant they were either very confident or not planning to leave the way they came in. He went through the door. The apartment was dark, except for the streetlight coming through the window he had told Celeste to stay away from. He heard breathing, not from the bathroom, from the main room. He turned. There was a man standing near the window, large, in the way that certain professionals were large, functional rather than aesthetic, the size of someone who had needed it for their work. He had a phone in one hand and his other hand was empty and visible, and he was looking at Adrian with the particular expression of a man who had expected to have more time before this moment arrived. He was not chorus vain. Adrian had never seen him before. From behind the bathroom door, Celeste's voice, Adrian, alive, unhurt. She had gone quiet from panic, not from harm, and the relief of that information moved through him so fast it almost registered as physical. I'm here, he said, to Celeste, still watching the man by the window. The man by the window said, in accented English that placed him somewhere Eastern European, I was only meant to look, to see if she was here. You broke into the apartment, Adrian said. The door was not broken. You had a key that wasn't yours. That's the same thing. He took one step toward the man. Who sent you? The man's eyes moved to the door, a calculation happening visibly. Don't, Adrian said, very quiet. The man went still. Marcus came through the door 11 seconds later with 2 of his people, and in the controlled, professional way that Marcus operated in these situations, the man by the window was contained before he had completed the decision to run, and Adrian stepped back and let Marcus do what Marcus did. He went to the bathroom door. He knocked. It's me, he said. It's clear. A pause. The sound of the lock turning. The door opened. Celeste stood in the small bathroom in the clothes she'd been wearing, her back against the far wall, her arms crossed over her chest. She was completely composed in the way that people are composed when they have made the decision to be composed by force of will alone and have been maintaining it for the last 4 minutes while their heart was doing things hearts shouldn't sustain. He looked at her. She looked at him. Are you hurt? He said. No, she said. He came through the door, but he stopped when I locked the bathroom. He didn't try to break it. He just stood there. And then I heard you on the stairs. He nodded. She uncrossed her arms and he saw, in the moment before she controlled it, that her hands were shaking slightly. Not much, just the aftermath of adrenaline working its way out. He did not reach for her hands. He wanted to. He did not. I need to deal with this, he said. There's a 2nd unit on the 5th floor. Marcus's people will take you there. It's secure and I'll be up within the hour. She looked at him steadily. Who is he? She said, tilting her head toward the main room. I don't know yet. But you will. Yes, he said. I will. She held his gaze for one more moment, then she nodded and moved past him into the main room, not looking at the man Marcus was handling near the window, looking at Adrian's 2nd operative, who appeared at the door on cue and said, 5th floor, Mrs. Voss. And she went without comment, taking nothing with her, leaving the suitcases on the floor where Pavel had set them. The door closed. Adrian turned to the man by the window. Sit down, he said. The man sat. He had the specific kind of resignation of someone who has been in this position before. Captured, contained, waiting to see what version of this particular situation he was in. His eyes were doing a professional assessment, clocking Marcus's people, the exits, Adrian's posture. Your name, Adrian said. Brennan, the man said. Probably not his name. Who gave you the key? Nothing. Who sent you here tonight? Nothing. Adrian looked at him for a moment. Then he looked at Marcus, and something passed between them that was not a word, and Marcus spoke briefly to his two people, and they left the room, and it was just the three of them. "I'm going to tell you what I already know," Adrian said. He pulled a chair from the kitchen table, turned it around, sat on it backward with his arms resting on the top of the back. Victor said, Chorus Vane, a vetting firm connected to a man named Drago Lev. 18 months of a placement operation that used a woman named Selena Hart as its primary instrument. I know the goal was the Meridian contract through character clause activation. He paused. I know Garen Moss is missing, and I know why. What I don't know yet is the operational structure between SED and the field level. You are field level. You were sent to confirm location, which means someone above you doesn't trust their intelligence on where my wife is, which means their intelligence broke down somewhere, which means the operation is already fragmented. He looked at the man steadily. You tell me what I can't already deduce, and I can make certain decisions about what happens next. For you. A long silence. The man named Brennan looked at his hands, then at Adrian, then at Marcus, then at a point on the floor somewhere between all of them. Vane is in the city, he said finally. He came in 2 days ago. Where? I don't know where he's staying. I only know he's here because I was briefed by his secondary, a man called Tet. What's the current instruction from Tet? Confirm the woman's location and report. Nothing further tonight. And Garen Moss? The man's jaw moved slightly. That wasn't me, he said, but you know where he is. A pause that lasted exactly long enough. He's alive, the man said. Vane doesn't... He stopped, recalibrated. The instruction was to hold him, not permanent. Alive. Something in Adrian's chest adjusted. Not relief yet. Conditional relief, contingent on the next several hours. Where is he being held, he said. I don't have that. I'm not in Vane's core team. I'm outside. I was contracted for surveillance and location work. I don't have operational details. Who does? Tet. How do I reach Tet? The man looked at him. Tet doesn't get reached, he said. Tet does the reaching. Adrian looked at Marcus. Marcus said very calmly, we can work with this. He left Marcus with Brennan and went upstairs. The fifth-floor unit was slightly larger and slightly less adequate than the third, which was an achievement in the wrong direction, but Celeste was sitting on the couch with her knees drawn up and a glass of water on the table in front of her that one of Marcus's people had presumably found in the kitchen, and she looked up when he came in. He's talking, Adrian said. She nodded. He sat in the chair across from her. The distance between the couch and the chair was about 6 feet. It felt appropriate. Not too close, not too far. The right distance for what they actually were right now, which was two people who had not fully resolved what they were to each other sitting in a fifth-floor safe house at 3:30 in the morning. Moss is alive, he said. Being held. We have a thread. She let out a breath. Okay, she said. The man who was in the apartment was surveillance. He wasn't there to hurt you. Yet, she said. Yet, he agreed. He didn't soften it. She looked at the glass of water. What happens now, she said. To all of it. The larger thing. I have the audio of Selena's recorded call to you. Calvin Drex cleaned it. 2.5 hours of work. You can hear her scripting the conversation. You can hear her say, at the end, that's enough. It was recorded for someone's review, proof of a completed task. Celeste looked at him. Something shifted in her expression. Not surprise. More like the specific feeling of having a thing confirmed that you couldn't quite make yourself believe until you heard it aloud. She recorded herself calling me, Celeste said. Yes. To prove to someone that she'd done it. Yes. Celeste was quiet for a moment. I knew her voice was wrong, she said, when she called. I knew something was wrong with it. I didn't have anything to attach it to, so I just put it down. And then when I saw you in the Galleria, I had something to attach it to, and I attached it to the wrong thing, she paused. I attached the wrongness of her voice to you. He said nothing. I should have trusted it, she said. The wrongness. You had no reason to, he said. She knew exactly what she was doing. She'd been studying you. I know. She picked up this water glass, put it down without drinking from it. That might be the worst part. That she studied me. That she sat somewhere and learned enough about me to know how to use me. She looked at him directly. She called me because she knew I wouldn't break. She knew that if she could get me to see something concrete, something I could point to, I wouldn't fight it. I would just go. He held her gaze. She knew that about you, he said, and she was right about it. She used it like a weapon, Celeste said. Yes. And you're going to make sure that there are consequences for that. It was not a question. She knew him well enough that it was not a question. Yes, he said. She sat back. The apartment was quiet, and the night outside was doing the thing nights do in the deep hours before dawn when the city is as close to silent as it gets. And they sat in the specific silence of two people who have a great deal to say to each other and are choosing what to say first because the order of it matters. I owe you something, Adrian said. She looked at him. Not about Selena, he said. About before that. The 9 months before all of this. He leaned forward with his forearms on his knees. I was absent, not physically, the other way. The way that's harder to point to. And I knew I was. And I told myself you were handling it, and you would come to me when you were ready, and in the meantime I kept moving. He paused. I was afraid. Something in her expression shifted. Of what? She said. He thought about how to say it accurately. He had always been careful about saying things accurately because he had learned that imprecision in communication was its own kind of lie. That you were starting to understand the full weight of what you'd agreed to, he said. When you were 28 and you said yes to all of it. I was afraid that 9 years in, with the full weight of it visible, you were calculating whether you'd made the wrong call. And I was afraid to ask because if the answer was yes, I had no argument against it. She was very still. So you went quiet instead, she said. I went quiet instead. And I thought the quiet meant you'd stop choosing me. I know, he said. I know that now. The water glass sat between them on the table, untouched. The filing, she said. He nodded. I haven't changed what I feel about what needs to change, she said. Between us. The things that were wrong before Selena, the distance, the way you disappear into the empire and stop seeing the apartment as somewhere you actually live, those things are still real and they still need to be addressed, not papered over because something worse happened that made us stand together. I know, he said. I mean that. I know you mean it, he said. And I'm not asking you to paper anything over. I'm asking for the chance to address the actual things, directly, with you. He paused. I'm asking you not to file Monday. She looked at him. He reached into his breast pocket. He put her ring on the table between them. Not as a gesture, not as a statement. He put it there simply because it was hers and he had been carrying it, and the right thing to do with something that belonged to someone was to place it where they could reach it. She looked at the ring. She did not pick it up. I need to think, she said. Okay, he said. I need more than one night in a safe house to decide something this large. Okay. And I need you not to work the situation, she said. I need whatever I decide to be because I decided it, not because you constructed the optimal conditions for a specific outcome. He looked at her. Is that what you think I'm doing? He said. She held his gaze. I think it's what you do, she said. I think it's how you exist in the world. I don't think it's malicious. I think it's just who you are. And I need to know that what I choose isn't the result of that. He thought about this honestly. Then I'll tell you this, he said. The ring is yours. The choice is yours. I have no leverage, and I'm not going to manufacture any, and every decision that happens after tonight about what we are or aren't is going to come from you on your terms. I'll still deal with said and vain and the full operational picture because that needs to happen regardless of what you decide. But what you decide, that's yours. I'm done trying to build conditions. She looked at him for a long time. Then she looked at the ring. She did not pick it up, but she did not push it away. By 5 a.m, Adrian was back in contact with Calvin Drex, with Marcus, with Grant Fielding, who had been woken at 4:45 and had not complained because Grant Fielding was paid not to complain, and the shape of what was happening in the next 24 hours was clearer. Calvin had a contact inside the city's organized crime intelligence unit, not a corruption arrangement, something older and more complicated, a favor owed from 7 years ago that Calvin had saved precisely for a moment like this. The contact confirmed that Corus Vane's presence in the city was known to law enforcement and had been for 36 hours, that they had a surveillance operation on him, and that a man matching Garen Moss's description had been seen at a warehouse property connected to a shell company in Vane's network in the South Industrial District. Marcus coordinated the intelligence with his own. By 6:15, they had an address. Marcus looked at Adrian across a table in the building's ground floor management office, which they had requisitioned without asking because there was no one in it at 6:15 in the morning. "This is law enforcement territory from here," Marcus said. "I know," Adrian said. "You're not going to the warehouse." "No," Adrian said. Marcus looked at him carefully. "That's the right call," Marcus said. "I know it's the right call," Adrian said. "It's also the only call that doesn't make things worse for Moss." He paused. "Give the address to Calvin's contact. Have them move within the hour before Vane knows the intelligence broke." Marcus made the call. By 7:43, Garen Moss was in an ambulance. He was dehydrated and had a broken finger on his left hand from an early negotiation that had not gone the way his captors wanted, but he was alive and he was conscious, and within 2 hours he was in a hospital bed telling a detective from the organized crime unit things that the organized crime unit had been trying to establish about Corus Vane's network for the better part of 3 years. Corus Vane was arrested at 9:18 at a hotel in the financial district where he had been staying under a false name that was good enough for the hotel's check-in process, and not good enough for the surveillance team that had been watching him since he landed. He said nothing. He did not need to. The evidence around him was comprehensive enough that his silence was a professional comfort rather than a legal strategy. Connection to Victor said took another 4 days to establish through formal channels. But the thread Marcus had pulled, the Dragolev connection, the vetting firm, the shell accounts, was handed to federal investigators who had their own reasons for wanting SED's network exposed, reasons that predated Adrian's situation by several years. Adrian did not testify. His legal exposure in the process of gathering the evidence he had gathered was a question that Grant Fielding managed with the particular skill of someone who had spent 20 years managing exactly these kinds of questions for exactly this kind of client. What Adrian provided was documentation and chain of custody and the audio recording that Calvin Drex had cleaned, and he provided it through proper channels and let the proper channels do what they existed to do. Selena Hart's situation moved through a different process. The internal investigation, the documented 18 months of premeditated manipulation, the financial records of her payments to photographers, the shell account, these constituted a civil matter of significant magnitude. Her attorney made an approach through intermediaries that suggested a settlement conversation was possible. Grant Fielding communicated that his client would discuss settlement only after full cooperation with the federal investigation into SED's network, cooperation that included everything Selena knew about the operational structure she had been placed inside. She cooperated. Whether the motivation was genuine or strategic was a question Adrian never asked and didn't need answered. Raymond Colt, whose financing of portions of the operation was established through the Liechtenstein Holding Company trace, became a separate federal matter that Adrian was peripheral to. He provided documentation and moved on. Daniel Rusk was not charged. He had pulled the photos when instructed, had cooperated fully with investigators, and had introduced his sister to Adrian at considerable personal risk given who he had been working with. Adrian did not pursue any action against him. He did not tell Daniel Rusk this directly. He simply did not pursue it, and Daniel Rusk understood the message through its absence. Garen Moss, once released from the hospital, asked through an intermediary whether he should expect any professional consequences for his original role in the photography operation. Adrian sent a single response through Marcus. No consequences, no contact required. The photographs Moss had taken from the upper level of the Galleria, the wide shot that showed everything, the full architecture of what Selena had constructed, were part of the evidentiary record and were also, at Adrian's specific request, sealed from public release. He did not want those photographs seen, not because of what they showed about Selena, because of what they showed about Celeste. The expression on her face in that lower left corner, the 40 seconds of a woman's private devastation. That was not something that needed to exist in the public record. It had served its legal purpose. What it documented was hers, and it would stay hers. The tabloid stories cycled and eventually resolved in the way tabloid stories resolve when the actual facts are made available and are more complicated than the narrative already published. Some outlets ran corrections. Some ran new stories framing Adrian as the wronged party. He declined all interview requests and made one formal statement through his PR team that was 2 sentences long and said only that the reporting on his marriage had been based on manufactured evidence that was now part of an ongoing federal investigation and that he had no further comment. The Meridian Group contract held. The character clause was never triggered because the documented evidence made clear that the apparent conduct had been staged, and Meridian's legal team reviewed the materials and concluded that their clause required actual conduct rather than manufactured appearances of it. Victor Said's logistics subsidiary did not get the competitive rebid. This outcome gave Adrian no particular satisfaction. He had noted early in his career that winning did not produce satisfaction in him the way it seemed to produce it in other men. What he felt after winning was usually a brief cessation of the specific tension that had existed before the outcome, followed by the awareness of the next thing that needed addressing. The next thing that needed addressing was his marriage, or what remained of it, or what it might become. He and Celeste did not have a single large conversation about this. That was not how they worked, and 9 years had not changed it. What they had was a series of smaller conversations, spread over 3 weeks, in different locations. Some in the North Quarter safe house before she moved back to Joss's at her own request, some over the phone in the evenings when he called because he had said he would call, and he kept his word when he said things, some in person in public places that were neither his territory nor hers. In the first conversation, she asked him to describe, specifically, what he thought he had done wrong in the 9 months before the Galleria. Not what Selena had done, not the external forces, not the circumstances. What he had done. He described it, specifically, without deflection. He had not offered the full picture to anyone before, not to Marcus, not to Grant, not to himself with full honesty, and the process of saying it aloud to her was different from the process of understanding it privately. More specific, more embarrassing, more true. She listened. She did not tell him he was forgiven. She asked 3 questions. He answered them. She said she needed more time. In the second conversation, she told him that she had spoken to a therapist for the first time in her life at Mila's long-standing suggestion, and that the first session had been deeply uncomfortable and she intended to continue, and that she thought he should do the same. He said he would think about it. She said that meant no. He said it meant he would think about it. He went. Not to the therapist she saw, to a different one, a man named Dr. Soren Kai, who had been recommended by a colleague who had spoken about it, the way people speak about things that are reliable rather than miraculous, and who turned out to be the kind of person who asked questions Adrian had not expected to be asked, and waded through silences in a way that made it difficult to fill the silence with something that wasn't true. The third conversation happened on a Saturday afternoon, outside, in a part of the city neither of them had been to much. A stretch of waterfront that smelled like the river and had a concrete walkway and benches that had seen better decades. They walked rather than sat, because Celeste thought better walking, and he had learned this about her years ago, and it had stayed true. She told him that Patricia Hale had been informed that the Monday filing was postponed, not withdrawn. Postponed. He said he understood the difference. She said she knew he did. They walked another block, and she said, "I'm not the same person I was before this. I need you to understand that. Not in a way that means I'm damaged. Just, I know things now about myself that I didn't know. About what I can do and what I refuse to do and what I need that I hadn't articulated." She paused. "And I need whatever comes next between us to account for those things. Not the person I was at 28, who I am now." He said, "Tell me who you are now." She looked at him, then she told him. It took most of the walk. She told him things she had figured out in Joss's guest room, and in the 5th-floor safe house, and in the therapist's office, and in the 3 weeks of figuring out what she wanted the rest of her life to look like. She told him about the design studio job Joss had found her contact for, which she had pursued and been offered and accepted, because it turned out that having her own work, her own income, her own professional identity that did not exist in the shadow of his name was not something she was willing to negotiate away from. She told him that she needed to know where he was, not every movement, but the shape of his life visible to her, the way a home has lights you can see from outside. She told him that the late nights and the silence and the tilted phone screens were not things she could absorb again. He listened the way he had wanted her to listen when he described what he had done wrong, without qualification, without constructing his response while she was still talking. When she finished, he said, "The job. You'd keep the job, even if— Yes, she said. Okay, he said. That's not negotiable. I'm not negotiating, he said. I said okay. She looked at him sideways while they walked. You did, she said, like she was checking. I meant it, he said. She was quiet for a moment. The ring is on the nightstand in Joss's guest room, she said. I haven't moved it. I haven't put it back on. I haven't thrown it anywhere. She paused. I look at it in the morning. He said nothing. I don't know what that means yet, she said. It means you're not done, he said. She considered this. It means I'm not done, she agreed. They reached the end of the walkway where it turned back, and they stood for a moment at the railing looking at the river. The water was dark gray and moving, and the city was visible across it, the skyline he had built significant portions of. And next to him, Celeste had both hands on the railing, and her hair was doing what her hair did in wind, which was to refuse to behave. And she was looking at the water with the expression of someone who is present in their body in a way that had not always been available to her. He looked at her profile. She turned and caught him looking. For a moment they just held that, being looked at and looking back. The ordinary, extraordinary thing of two people seeing each other after a very long time away. Don't make me regret staying, she said. It was not a threat, not a demand. It was the most honest thing she had said to him in months, maybe longer. The thing stripped of all the careful management they had both been doing of themselves and each other, and it landed accordingly. I won't, he said. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she turned back to the river. He turned with her. They stood at the railing in the specific quality of that afternoon light, the kind that falls at an angle in autumn and makes everything it touches look a little more permanent than it is. And the river moved below them, doing what rivers do, which is to keep going regardless of what is happening on the banks. Neither of them spoke for a while. It was the most honest silence they had shared in 9 months. When they walked back, it was side by side, close enough that their arms occasionally brushed without either of them adjusting away. And at the end of the walkway where the concrete met the street, Celeste stopped and turned. She looked at him for a moment. Then she reached into her jacket pocket. She put her hand out. In her palm was the ring. She had brought it. She looked at it, and then she looked at him, and her expression was not the expression of a woman making a romantic gesture. It was the expression of a woman making a considered, costly, clear-eyed decision that she had arrived at through 9 months of distance and 4 days of crisis and 3 weeks of the hardest kind of thinking. She put it on her own finger, not asking him to do it, doing it herself. Both hands, the way you do it when you are doing something for yourself rather than for an audience. She looked at it for a moment. Then she looked at him. This doesn't mean everything is fine, she said. I know, he said. This means I'm willing to find out what it can be, she said. I know, he said. She nodded once. She said, walk me to the car. He walked her to the car. He opened the door. She got in. He closed it. She rolled down the window. Tuesday, she said. Dinner. 7 o'clock. Home. And Adrian? She held his gaze. Be there. He said, I'll be there. She nodded. The window went up. The car pulled out. He stood on the sidewalk and watched it go, and then he stood there a moment longer after it had turned the corner, on a block that was just a block, just a city sidewalk with its particular smell of exhaust in autumn. And he held the fact of what had just happened inside him, not dramatically, not with the swelling internal narrative of a man experiencing a turning point, just held it. She had put the ring back on herself. She had brought it with her. She had made her choice on a concrete walkway by a gray river in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. And the choice was not a resolution, and it was not a clean ending, and it was not the beginning of something uncomplicated. It was the beginning of something real. He put his hands in his jacket pockets and turned and walked back toward his car. And the city did what the city did around him, indifferent and enormous, and full of people who were right now in the middle of their own difficult things. And he walked through it the way a man walks when he has just been given a chance he is genuinely not sure he deserves and has made a decision, without ceremony, to be worth it. Tuesday, 7 o'clock.